Baltimore and WNST.net. So many stories, so little time, but we have plenty of time to stretch out this week amidst the Oriole baseball and the Ravens OTAs and the Stanley Cup and NBA Finals all happening right now. We've been discussing all things Muhammad Ali, and we go now north to Philadelphia and bring in one of the best cut men in the business, 37 years as not only a boxer, trainer, promoter, cut man, also Pennsylvania Hall of Famer. We welcome in the legendary Joey I to discuss a Philadelphia perspective on this. First off, Joey, welcome in. Great to have you aboard, my man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be included in this about Muhammad Ali. There's a lot to obviously be said on all different areas, especially in Philadelphia. I grew up in Philly. I've been here my whole life. I'm pushing 50 years old, so I was here when Ali was here.
Yeah, and, I'm 47, and I think all of it is sort of colored by your perspective, what your father thought of Vietnam and of race. Yeah. My father hated Ali. My father hated Cosell. My dad was Archie Bunker, famously, so I grew up in a household like that. I never really had disdain for Ali, but I did have an attraction to boxing, and I think for me it was more about an attraction to Sugar Ray Leonard, being a Baltimore kid, and he, of course, fought his first fights here. I was 8 years old, and Ali, as I've told people all week, he was kind of like the fat Elvis character at that point in the world.
At that point when he came back, after his banishment for 3 years, it was that comparison to the 50s, like hip, skinny Elvis to the 70s Vegas Elvis.
Yeah, and they both were Vegas, right? They both sort of wore the fat guy white outfits, right?
Just like Elvis. Elvis is always Elvis. You know what I mean? It's almost like the way some people say, well, Van Halen wasn't Van Halen after saying, any Van Halen is any Van Halen. You know what I mean? To me, you know what I mean? It might not be as good, but it still was Van Halen. It's the same thing with Ali. And for me, you kind of mentioned the same thing. I grew up, I'm from Philadelphia, so automatically we were not an Ali household.
Of course. You were Frazier. Everybody in that area.
The whole family. I used to work with some of his family, like his daughter and his sons in their corners and stuff. But my father, part of the reason, he wasn't hip to him was because he served his country. He got drafted. He went in the whole thing, and he served. He was a mailman for 35 years. So he was a government type employee type guy who believed in all the red, white, and blue, and he served the country, and it, so for us, especially being from Philly, but the ironic part was my connection to Ali is that my father was his mailman when he lived in Philadelphia.
Well, how about that? And, for you to get into the boxing game, and you're a couple of years older than me, the first fighter you knew must have been Ali, and the first thing you knew was Ali Frazier, right?
I'm 47 years old, and the first fight that my father ever let me stay up late and watch was in 1975. It was 4 days shy of my 6th birthday. I got to see Ali fight Chuck Wepner. Now, the first fight I remember in my mind that I can remember seeing live on television late at night. Well, and that hooked me right there.
And Ali was a closed-circuit sensation there, right? I mean, you probably had to go down to, the Spectrum probably, had those fights in the early 70s.
The Civic Center, places like that, they would show, and it was because a guy who eventually wound up being my manager when I was a fighter was Joe Hand, who handled all that. They handled all the closed circuit and everything for all those fights. They had Joe Frazier, the Clover Light situation. It was amazing to, everybody always says, he was the greatest. He was the greatest because, not because of his fighting, but because he transcended just everything. I mean, he was just the world, not just the world heavyweight champ. He wasn't just this. I mean, he is what any fighter, anybody in boxing could hope to ever be. I mean, he just made, you know what I mean? Like, he's the most famous person ever, and it wasn't just because he was a fighter.
We are chatting with Joey I, the legend out of Philadelphia, and in the red corner, I'll say, up in Philadelphia. It's also interesting for you being a kid of that age. I caught on to all the Rockies. You're the same age as me. Yep. You growing up wanting to be a fighter in Philadelphia. There's a whole Rocky story, and let's be honest, Rocky was part Ali, and so was Apollo Creed, right? Apollo Creed was Ali.
I can go one better for you. Ali, that Wepner fight that I saw, that's what inspired the Rocky movie, for Stallone to write the movie. Now, Rocky 2, I was in it.
Wow.
I'm the first little kid you see at the top of the stairs, and all the little kids chased him. That made me become a fighter.
How about
and
that?
Partially,
You're in Rocky 2? You're a real celebrity. How many times I watched that movie?
I'm in Rocky 5. I'm in Rocky Balboa, and I played myself in Creed. In the last movie, I was a technical advisor, and I also played myself.
And you don't even have to make the accent up. You got the real thing going on up there.
It's great, But but it inspired me. It really did. I told Stallone this when we were making the Creed movie. I said, the last time I was this close to you, I was sitting on your shoulders. And he went, oh, my God, you're the little kid in 1979 put on my shoulders at the Art Museum. I said, yes, I am. And I said, if you hadn't done that, we would not be standing here right now making. And he said, why? I said, because I know it's not a big deal to you, but you inspired me. You inspired a lot of people to become fighters. And I said, and if that hadn't happened, I said, 37 years later, 36, whatever, you guys are calling me up to help me come and help work on the movie with you. And I said, here I am. I never looked back. 36, 37 years later, I had my father the day after I was in that movie, took me right to the gym, and I never looked back. And then eventually, even when I was done fighting, I also became a movie actor. I do a lot of movies. So I had both those, that movie, Rocky, kind of made me go in the movie business and the boxing business. But it can all stem from Ali and Wepner, because nobody thought Wepner would even go 3 rounds with Ali, and he did. And he hung in there got stopped in the 15th round. And I've met Chuck Wepner too, great guy. And funny story. Chuck told me that he gave his wife a nice negligee the day of the fight, and said, wear this tonight because you're going to be sleeping with the champ of the world tonight. when he came back to the room that night, she goes, she was wearing it, and she said, should he come to my room or will I go to his room? I said, wow. But, Ali was just everything. Look what he did. He made it still by him being him. Apollo Creed tried to be as best as he could to be just like Ali, but there was nobody like Ali. And I've told like Stallone and other people when we make movies about boxing, it's you guys come close, but you'll never get exactly to what boxing really is. You can try to emulate it, but there's just an aura about it. There's a way about it that you just can't even duplicate in movies. And just like that with Apollo Creed, he was flashy. He'd come out, on a boat and dressed up as George Washington and the whole thing, and I want you and all that stuff. But that was only a fraction of trying to be like Ali.
Joey I joining us here out of the fighting city of Philadelphia. The Frazier Ali thing's interesting, Joey, because my wife and I were talking over the weekend, and she saw the HBO piece. I'm going to have Ross Greenberg on later in the week to talk to him a little bit about Frazier's side of this. And I really, to justify it is impossible 50 years later to say that black versus white is ever right, but don't tell Donald Trump that. Right. But at this point in time, we look back on it with some bad taste in our mouth. At that particular time, it literally was about selling tickets. It was show business, right? And it was just part of show business, and it was a part that Frazier either didn't understand, comprehend, like.
Yeah, he didn't completely comprehend it, but he also took it personally because there's more to it than a lot of people know. See, he basically bankrolled Ali while he was banished from boxing. He paid his bills for him. He took him places. He did a lot of things for him, and there's stories that kind of, Ali wasn't too nice to him as Joe Frazier's going, here's $3,000, here's $2,000, here, you know what I mean? He drove him one time to a speech he was going to give. He had no way to get there. Joe Frazier took him there. He helped him. He was a vital part in helping him to get his license back because he knew that those two needed to fight each other.
Well, and he also stood up for him during the time when your father and everybody else who ever served was down on him, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you remember, when people look back, there's a lot of people that hate Mayweather for his attitude and his this and the way he fights. And someday they'll make him out to be a saint. You know what I mean? They'll forget all the bad because a lot of people forget all that. There was a time, like you said, it was totally divided. You know, if you were patriotic and you served in the war, in any war, or served in the army, you were definitely a Joe Frazier guy. And if you were against the war, then you were an Ali guy. You know, I mean, there's people I still hear, like you're saying, like Archie Bunker type people. There are still people to this day, you know, maybe 70, 80-year-old guys will still call Ali Cassius Clay.
Yeah,
I remember when Clay fought, like, when Clay, like, geez, my God, I wasn't even alive when he changed his name. You know, it's like, come on.
So, Joey, through all these years, you've been up in Philadelphia. I mean, you're associated with the game in such a way and been around it. I'm sure you've been in a room with Frazier 1,000 times just because he's been around and you're there.
Well, we actually used to hang out, ironically, in a junkyard together every once in a while in Philly. We had a mutual friend who had a junkyard, and we'd be down there, and you know, and I actually had asked Joe one time, you know, I said, because he was still very bitter about it at the time, you know, and this was probably maybe 15 years ago, and I said, do you feel bad that he has Parkinson's and everything? He said, he called him the butterfly. He said, butterfly, he ain't got Parkinson's. I said, well, what does he have? He said, he got lephatitis from me. I said, wow. I said, he was still bitter and still said, hey, you know, this is, you know, because they were just bitter rivals till the end.
I had him on the air 10 or 15 years ago, and he was bitter, you know, and didn't mind being bitter and was okay with it. There was no fight left to fight at that point, right?
You know, so he you know, like a lot of people just don't understand, like you said, the show business part to it, the sell the tickets part to it, you know, and it you know, but like I said, there's things we don't know, you know what I mean, that'll probably now will just go away with history, you know.
Joey I joining us here out of Philadelphia. So for Ali, did you come in contact with him through all of your 37 years now in the fight game in any way?
Yes, I think it was twice at two different events that I think one where I was at a fight in Atlantic City way back, and then another time, trying to remember, it was I think it was in New York. I was working a fight, and he had been there, and you know, got to meet him, and you know, just, you know, shake his hand and talk a few seconds, but nothing, you know, like I said, my biggest connection would be that my father was his mailman back in like 1970.
Hey, man, what's going on with you up in Philly? I mean, I know we still got a lot of young people that want to fight, want to be a part of it. It's something you do. And I think beyond all of this Ali thing is the whole Shakespearean tragedy of a guy who spent the first 2/3 of his life being famous for talking with his hands and magic tricks and his charm and his charisma and his good looks and his wit and all of that. And the last quarter of a century has been stoically silent, right? I mean, and what boxing can do to a person. Same as football and the CT. We're getting into all that. But boxing was, you know, the first place this happened, and it played out with the most famous man in the world over the last quarter of a century. But we really don't talk about that so much, do we?
No, I know. Well, part of what some of the that there isn't to talk about, like not to be a tough guy or anything, but nobody makes us become fighters. I mean, I took a lot of punishment myself. You know, I tell people all the time, I didn't get this face eating Cheerios. I wasn't born this ugly. You know, so I tell my wife all the time, I feel bad for you and my kids because someday you guys are going to be wheeling me around in a wheelchair and I'm going to be looking up at the lights. I said, but nobody made me or Ali or Frazier, anybody fight or made anybody play football. And some guys like Ali and Frazier and most of the football players, they make tons of money. And you know, so you take that punishment in the hope to make a lot of money. I mean, it's different than being a soldier who got drafted. You know, a guy comes back with no leg, or he's got what do you call PSST? I mean, you know, those are people that, you know, were either defending the country because they wanted to, or because somebody, you know, made them, drafted them to go do it. And as fighters and athletes and things like that, nobody makes us do those things. So we take that risk for the hope, for the glory, and for the love of the game, and obviously to make a lot of money.
Well, hey, man, it's great having you on. I appreciate the Ali memories. And now every time I watch Rocky II when it's on AMC late at night, I'm going to be looking for you running up the steps.
I'm the little kid. I got a blue jacket with white sleeves. Actually, you know what jacket I'm wearing? Ironically, a Baltimore Colts jacket.
Hey, now you're talking, right?
How about that? Yep. They were my favorite team when I was a little kid for some ironic reason.
Were you a Burt Jones guy then? I guess you must have been.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
All right.
You know, I'm funny. You know, but you know, it's a funny world. You know, But yeah, no, it's great to be on, and I'm glad you asked me. And you know, glad I could give you some insight on Ali, and it's always great to talk boxing, whether good, bad, or ugly.
Hey, I'll be back up in Philly before it's all over. Too many concerts up there at Camden and the Man, and obviously Springsteen this summer, so you'll see me up in Philadelphia. Take care, Joey.
Me there, yeah.
I'll see you there, man. I owe you a beer. There he goes, Joey I up in Philadelphia. Legendary corner man, 37 years in the Philadelphia fight game, talking some Smokin' Joe and some Ali as well. And in Rocky 2 and Rocky 5 and all the Creed, all those movies. So there you have at it. You can find me out in the Bio Toyota Audiovault talking Ali, Orioles, Ravens this week. Obviously the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA Finals as well. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear anywhere you are. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.